Members of the Senate's Foreign Relations Committee trying to deal with this. They were briefed today, arriving at the State Department to sit down with Secretary Kerry. Senator Bob Menendez leading the group, chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, joining me now. Well, you heard what Richard is reporting from the field. Could we be drawn into this reluctantly just to be a countervailing force against Iran?
No, I don't think that's going to be our determinant.
Well, let me ask you what Secretary Kerry is telling you, because our reporting is that the president is really reluctant to use air power, and there are some reports coming out of the National Security Council that John Kerry is on one side of this argument and Susan Rice and her colleagues on the other.
Well, first of all, today's breakfast had been predetermined. It was with members of the Foreign Relations Committee, and it wasn't Iraq-specific, although Iraq certainly came up. Look, I think the question is for the United States, what's our national security interest here? And certainly ISIS, if it can gain control of a significant part of Iraq and that part of Syria that it has, creates a triangle of ungoverned space in which we have to be worried about them as an entity trying to pursue 9/11 type attacks. And so that's what our national security interests are, and we'll have to determine how we respond to that. As you heard from Richard, the challenges of responding to that are significant. Air power alone won't win the day. The question is, do we have enough actionable intelligence that we can, with precision, strike at ISIS in a way that protects our national security interests? And then hopefully lets Maliki and the Iraqis come together as a people, which has been one of his huge failures. As he was here last year, I pressured him on that question when he met with the committee about being all-inclusive in Iraq. But for our calculus, it has to be, what can we do successfully to thwart ISIS, not simply because of Iraq's stability, but our own national security?
Well, first of all, should airstrikes be off the table?
Well, I don't think anything should be off the table. The question is, can you have the type of intelligence, which I believe we are now riveting back on Iraq in terms of imagery, satellite, and other, intelligence assets, to be able to determine, are there high-value targets that you can pursue with minimum, if any, civilian damage, so that you don't have the consequences that Richard himself spoke about from his report from the field.
And at the same time, our new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll shows that 54% of those polled believe that this president cannot lead. Stunning numbers. These numbers show a lower percentage of people believing that the president can lead than supported President George W. Bush after Katrina. Our own Chuck Todd says that this is the dagger through the heart of this presidency.
Well, look, I think opinion polls are a snapshot in a moment. We just saw this president capture one of the Benghazi suspects in the death of our ambassador. He said over time he would do it. He did it. He did the same thing with bin Laden when others said they would and never were able to capture him. He did. And I think the question becomes, this is also a war-weary country. And so how you respond to our national security interests by potentially having limited strikes based upon intelligence that actually gives you the value you want, which is stopping ISIS in its tracks, because we don't want them to be able to launch attacks to our interests in the region or outside, is something we'll see unfold. At the end of the day, the world has become a challenging place, probably more turmoil than I've seen in my 22 years in the Congress, and so meeting all these challenges would be unique to any presidency whatsoever. I would remind people that the reason that we're in this situation in Iraq in the first place is because George W. Bush took us there when we shouldn't have been there in the first place, and that's why I voted against the war in Iraq. And now we've seen the consequences that flow from an intervention in which we should have never been.
Is it time to pull the plug on Maliki?
Well, I think Maliki's going to pull the plug on himself if he cannot ultimately reach out. Now, I understand there was a late-night meeting yesterday in which Maliki called in a wide cross-section of the Iraqi community, Sunnis and Kurds as well as Shia, and they came up with a 19-point plan, which hasn't been, I think, very much got much public attention. If, in fact, he engages in a meaningful way so that every Iraqi feels, Sunni, Shia, and Kurd feels that they are fighting for a country in which they have a stake and are truly a citizen of, then there is an opportunity. If not, I don't see how he survives.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, the Chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, Bob Menendez.